Do you have questions on how to properly care for your pet? When is the right time to get your pet spayed or neutered? Or maybe you're looking for a place for your pet to stay while you go on vacation. Mapleview Animal Hospital. Dr. Bader from Mapleview Animal Hospital gives you great advice for your pets. Mapleview Animal Hospital on Panther Drive at the corner of Riley and 136th on Holland's north side. And on the web at mapleviewanimalhospital.net. Mapleview Animal Hospital. They love your pet like you do.
All right, we're back here with Talk of the Town, and we're back here with some guests in the studio from Holland Hospital. We have Kyle Krause, a therapist and behavioral health services, and Scott Steenwyk, therapist in behavioral health services. And good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Hey, thanks, Juke. Thanks for having us.
All right, we're talking about depression today, and we don't mean financial depression. We mean the type that people get. How do you define depression?
It's a long-standing feeling of being down, feeling like maybe life isn't worth living. It affects how you think, how you feel, how you behave, and it starts to affect your functioning. It's a little bit more than just your regular up and down kind of, everybody has bad days, but this is long-standing, more than 2 weeks that's affecting your functioning, and it can affect everybody a little bit differently, so there's certain symptoms that we do look for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Juke, I would just kind of add on to that and say, depression, the textbook answer would be depression is a mood disorder that it causes a persistent feeling of sadness and a loss of interest. And so some of the things that we look for is what kind of changes are going on in somebody's life. So somebody who's typically, pretty busy or outgoing, keeps themselves busy. Now they're more sticking into their house, in their house, or keeping alone, or people call up and say, hey, do you want to go out, go to dinner? And they say no, but they don't really have a good reason for not wanting to go. Mm-hmm. Or, so we look for big opposite changes. And in teenagers, typically some of those changes that we look for are, where they're really irritable, which, like I've said before, that can always be difficult to tell with teenagers.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they seem pretty irritable anyways. But so we look for a lot of those different kind of changes. And one thing, because Kyle and I do work with adults, but we certainly work with teens and adolescents. One thing that's come up quite a bit is cutting, where people will cut themselves or burn themselves. I'm sure it's done in adults, but more so because we do work with children and adolescents. We see quite a bit more of that. Would you agree, Kyle?
Yes, unfortunately, I think especially teens not sure how to cope with things sometimes, just like all of us, sometimes have positive coping mechanisms and sometimes not so positive, and sometimes that's one they turn to that has negative consequences.
How about the trigger? What can trigger depression?
Well, you kind of touched on earlier when you said not a financial depression, and if you remember 5 years ago,
I could do that too.
Yeah, well, 5 years ago, and certainly we're trying to get out of that still as a country, but 5 years ago was so tough for people, and certainly, like I said, it's still going on. But finances can trigger it, and I remember there was a game we used to play. We'd go to arcades, and it was called Whack-A-Mole. And you'd hit the mole and it would pop up. And as the game went on, it got harder because there would be more and more moles that would pop up, and you have to hit them faster and faster. Right. So one of the things that can trigger depression for people is it's not just one thing, but it's a whole bunch of things that go on. It's a loss of a job, or maybe a pay reduction in a job, and then it's problems in the marriage, or at school. It's getting behind in your schoolwork and it starts to pile up, or with bills, and they you can handle being late on one bill or not maybe being able to pay the full, but you get a whole bunch of bills and they start to pile up. So that could be the financial side of it. Other things that can trigger it are somebody, maybe there's a family history of it with genetics.
Yeah. Certainly people can be predisposed to that, just like any other, illness, diabetes, things like that. Even positive events, sometimes that's one that people often miss or don't recognize when their life seems like it's going well and they don't feel like they have a reason to be depressed, and that can be pretty confusing. So sometimes things like retirement, where you have to kind of redefine yourself in a way that's different than you have in the past, can sometimes bring on some of those kinds of symptoms too.